I believe wholeheartedly that flow is the space between intention and surrender, letting go and knowing where I want to go. Because there's this whole modality of I want to go this direction and I'm open to whatever the universe has to add to this. I make space for that.
What's up, y'all? D Foss here. Welcome back to another episode of LT360. I'm here with my man, Wolf Castillo. The man, the myth, the legend. This dude is awesome. We've actually only connected in person once. We met at a slush rope flow crazy trainer elevate workshop. It was an amazing collaboration of awesome Florida minds and actually people from all over the world, or the country, I should say. We had North Carolina, Vegas, Florida, both South and Central. So it was an awesome experience. Me and this guy played Frisbee for about 4 hours, I think, that day.
Wild.
Which was crazy, dude. I played Frisbee Sunday. We did a little similar kind of concept. We went out to the park, we played Frisbee, and I was thinking about you. I was like, oh man, I wish I had Wolf to play with right now. I can't find someone to play Frisbee with like that.
Bro, we were hamming it too.
Yeah, dude. It was great. Wolf is, in the health and wellness field and industry, trying to radically change the way people view wellness overall. And I kind of want to let him explain. So I want to give you the table, but I want to ask you this question to give you some context.
Sure.
When someone asks, Wolf, what do you do? How do you answer that?
It changes every time. And I feel like why it changes every time is because I always want to respond in a way that is most going to land with that person. I try to like really get in their world about it. But in this moment, what do I do? Well, I'm going to start with why. And what I mean by that is I believe in our inherent nature that when we live in alignment with truth, with divine sacred truth, we begin to get really present to who we are at a core level. And in that doing, I think we realize what was really important to us, and it inspires us to create a life that we love. So for me, I really have this mission and this desire to create sacred spaces where people feel empowered to just unlock this deep self-expression, this 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 thing that's within them that normally gets withheld, that childlike playfulness, that like essence that we often squander and shut down because we're too worried about what do people think about me, like what if it doesn't look good, what if my movement doesn't look good, what if it doesn't look clean, like right in our conversations around movement or like even rope flow, like I did that for the first time when I met you. It really just boils down to unlocking that playful self-expression and elevating the consciousness of the planet. So what I do is I'm pretty much an embodied movement and self-expression coach. I kind of like play around in that sphere. I'm also the host of the Follow the Wolf podcast, where we dive deeper in these conversations around truth. And I'm a mental health advocate. Kind of like a lot of what I speak to is just around different practices, tools, etc., that allow us to feel empowered here. Because I think when we got this right, everything else just kind of seems to conform. So it's a long-winded answer to say I just like helping people have fun and play and unlock that childlike curiosity.
Boom. And now y'all know why we connected so well. So I want to tackle a couple things there, dude, because you hit on so many good points. For one, last week I was at a business convention in North Carolina, or it was 2 weeks ago now, and this guy Gary Brecka came on, and he does a whirlwind of things. He's like a biohacker of sorts, on the playing field of trying to let people understand how to live a longer, healthier, more ideal life, right? And he spoke on the fact, well, he said it to the audience like this. He asked the question, what do you think is the most high vibration that the human aura can give off? And everyone starts screaming out answers: joy, love, happiness, all of these different things, right? And he goes, actually, the highest vibration we can give off is authenticity and being truthful, and that authentic self that is really deep within us that we're so often, like you said, kind of drowning out because we're afraid of what's going to happen within the perspective of the people around us, right? And societal norms and things like that. So I think in terms of what you do, it's like you're a guide for someone to be authentic, right? You're creating, like you said, kind of those sacred spaces for people to feel as if they can express their most authentic self and actually have that freedom to do so and not feel squandered. So that was definitely the vibe that I got when I was with you. Like everybody was talking, right, when Slush was giving her little speech and kind of asking, like the answer you gave was, I was like, wow, okay, that makes perfect sense. I got to talk to this dude later. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, it just naturally, I don't even think we really talked. We were just kind of
We're
playing
flowing
around.
together.
We were flowing, and and it was more physical, like expression through the rope and playing frisbee and just like experiential in a sense. And then we
Yeah.
really started to talk and contact like afterwards from like a logic standpoint and actually having conversation. So you are definitely doing that on a high level, and it's good that people are starting to like recognize that in a sense, and feel like they can be the best selves around you. I also want to talk to you and ask you about the Follow the Wolf podcast. Kind of talk to me about that, um, when you decided to launch that and what the mission is with that.
Sure. So real quick, I'm going to answer that, but I just want to go back real quick and just speak to what you said, which is I didn't make that connection, but like the fact that you're right, like we didn't actually exchange all that too many words,
No.
but there was this underlying, this felt energy that was there. And it was the flowing when we were separate, but then it was the throwing of the frisbee and the way that that energy flowed as well. And then somehow we ended up conversating. It's like, yo, I want you on my podcast. Like, great, because I want you on my podcast. Like, we're gonna make this happen. And now here we are, and kind of like tying it to the followable podcast. So uh sheesh, how much of the story do you want? Because I can kind of keep it brief and maybe like bite sized, but there's a longer story.
Let's go like a bite and a half.
A bite and a half. Okay. So my birth given name is actually Jared. And there came a point in my journey where I realized very distinctly, I was, like graduating college, walked across the stage, got my diploma. And I remember being there and my parents were super excited. Everyone's super ecstatic, but I just felt not ecstatic like everybody else was. I was like kind of looking at this piece of paper, like kind of almost like questioning why. Like I didn't feel like it was for me. It didn't feel like an accomplishment, right? Like I put like 4 years of hard work and money and energy and studying and late nights, early mornings, working 3 jobs at certain points, and like going to school full time and like battling chronic depression and anxiety because like all the other things that I was overcoming during that time period, and to like get there and to be like, this this doesn't feel right.
Dude,
I
question for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Go ahead.
Um, were you considering not going to your stage walk? Because I was highly considering not going. My parents kind of yelled at me.
No, I would never do that because it would have been such I couldn't do it for the very knowing that my family did so much to make that possible. Like, and I was the first person in my family, my immediate lineage, to actually get a degree. So it was kind of a big deal. There was a lot of pressure to follow through on that. So I don't think I could have ever have done that knowing everything that my parents did. I mean, like, raised me, put clothes on my back, put food in my belly, like all these they did. I don't think I could have, but I hear you.
For me, it was like I knew I was gonna get that. I'm ready to move on. Like I'm already past this.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where my mindset was. Like if you're excited to come watch me walk the stage here, like just wait to what I'm gonna accomplish in 3 years. Like,
Correct.
that's kind of where my mindset was.
Your brain was already on that limitless vibration, man. It was skipping steps.
It was skipping steps, yeah. But go back to your follow the wolf. So you walk across stage, you're not feeling as joyful as you thought you might, as
Sure.
fulfilled as you thought you might. How did that continue on?
Yeah, so there it was around that time that when I got my graduation, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right. I actually went to a business development event where they pretty much were helping you to create what they called a stand, which is essentially like a why. Like, what is it that who is it that you want to serve, and what is it that you want to serve them? And it was then when I realized, I kind of like emphatically stated, like, I want to serve. And at the time, it was specifically focused on youth, like teens and young adults. And how it kind of came through and was verbalized was, I felt like my life up to that point wasn't really mine, in that I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. I wanted to please my parents. I wanted to please society. I wanted to do it the way that I was told I was supposed to: go to school, get good grades, get a good job, like you get married, have, a couple kids, maybe have like a dog, white picket fence, like, that whole thing, 9 to 5, like whatever that was, the model that we were passed down. Like I was kind of like adhering to that, but it became very evident very quickly that, okay, this wasn't what I came here to do when I was in this event, and I emphatically claimed this. So time passes on as the business started to develop. My coach and I were talking about this conversation around the wolf, and creating a podcast called Follow the Wolf. And at the time, I was still going by Jared, but then something struck me that the wolf, as we went through, we actually made I just forgot the word acronym. We made an acronym out of it because it was then designed to be a speech, and a speech that I was going to give to kind of empower youth at that time. And it was all around pretty much truth and empowering people to live their truth. And what ended up happening is I was like, screw it, like I'm going to change my name to Wolf. And kind of why I decided what I was going to do that was, I was having a conversation with my dad, and I always liked the kind of philosophy of the wolf, where it was like there's a lone wolf who goes and does like its own work, but then it also works as a pack, and works as a number of wolves to accomplish a similar goal. So it kind of goes from that like yin yang energy, if you will. And I always just was inspired by the wolf. And one day I was in conversation with my dad in his office. He's like, yeah, it's also cool about wolf is that wolf spelled backward is flow. And when he said that, it blew my brains all over the wall, because I've been worshiping the ground that Bruce Lee walked around, his whole be like water and the concept of flow. It just like, it knocked my socks off. I was like, this is it. Like, this was meant to be.
That's awesome, dude. I never even put that together. Yeah.
What you're experiencing is what I was experiencing in that moment. Like, wait a second. If you carry the F and you carry the, whoa, he's right. It's crazy.
That's unreal. That's actually super, super dope.
Yeah.
So, and that was such a big part of what we actually, met through, was a form of flow. And that's all we did. We were flowing the rope, and then we were flowing the Frisbee. Like, we were tired, but we weren't, like we would have just kept going.
And as soon as you stop, you're like, oh, wait a second. You're back.
Seriously, I think I slept for like 12 hours the next day.
So much exertion.
Wow, that's super cool. So follow the wolf, and that concept of you're in a flow state. You are a lone wolf, separating from the pack of societal norms. Mm-hmm. And you're also going to bring some sort of communal guidance into, everyone being their own wolf, right? Everyone being their authentic self.
Yeah. So follow the wolf became, and what this was is I'm always very mindful about this, is it wasn't ever about following me, it's about following your truth. The wolf is indicative of and representative of follow your truth, but not just any truth, but sacred truth. And why that matters is a lot of people can go and do something really terrible, or I need to be mindful here. Do you allow cursing on this podcast? I almost cursed. I don't want to curse if it's not allowed.
It's all good.
Okay. So like a lot of people like go and do like just not cool shit, and then say like, well, this is my truth. It's like, no, like I'm talking about that like deep essence truth, that stuff that when you experience it, it's a felt experience. And it empowers you and empowers people around you. To say this is my truth and use it to disempower people, to me, that's not a sacred truth. That's likely some kind of pain that's being acted out in some kind of subconscious, unconscious, potentially displaced kind of way.
Yeah.
So follow the wolf is really about make sure that what you're doing is in alignment with what you believe and your values and your mission and your goals. And of course, you figure that out over time. But this idea of yes, let's separate from the sheep way thinking and then find community of people who support, elevate, and inspire you to continue pursuing that wolf, that mission, that intention. So the podcast then became an homage to let's have real and raw conversations with people where we talk about real shit, like the traumas that we experienced, or the things that we had to overcome. Because when people can connect and see themselves in you, or see some aspect of their story and your story, it creates a connection. And then we can then start to bridge the gaps, whether it's science or spirituality or whatever that thing is. It was, let's just have real conversations and make sure that we're empowering people to live their truth by us going out there and vulnerably saying, here's who I am. And I hope that this serves you in your journey.
Yeah. Live your truth and let others follow the same path on
Correct.
their journey. That's very in line. Yeah. I mean, it just makes so much sense that there's some sort of rhythmic scenario that causes us to be born, right? That causes us to be the one that showed up in flesh, the one that experienced all of these things throughout childhood, to then have your own conscious understanding of the world and trying to intertwine that with the subconscious perspective that you were given from the womb all the way through. And it's I to tie it all together, that's where I think there's infinite possibilities. And your heartbeat, right, is the aura that you give off. That's your heart feels something before any other part of your body. Right. So that understanding that if you can be guided by that, by the heartbeat, by the understanding that you want it to all be aligned and be truthful and be some sort of authentic, approach, then all of a sudden you start to feel that everything around you doesn't have to affect you, and you can have some sort of effect on it in a positive manner. You can absolutely be the one water droplet that causes the ripple, right? And that's a big part of my overall like day-to-day perspective. Be a water droplet, cause a ripple in a positive manner. So I mean, it just all makes sense now that I'm hearing this story, like where our mindsets are. So you graduated what year of high school?
So that was 2014. However, the story that I was relating to was 2018 college.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah.
suppose 2014 college is
I was just trying to put age together. So you're a year younger than me, or probably the same age, because
You're 26?
I'm 25.
I'm 25.
Yeah. Cool. And you graduated high school in Central Florida?
Yeah.
Correct. Cool. What part of Florida did you grow up in again?
I grew up in different parts of Orlando, like Winter Garden, Windermere, just kind of like different sections of Orlando.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, now paint the picture. You've talked a little bit about your family, right? You were the first one to officially get a degree from, some sort of higher education. What was, kind of like living situations as a kid with both parents, one parent, siblings, dogs, cats, all that, because I feel like that always plays a massive part in how we kind of develop.
It's a fascinating conversation. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. Uh, so both parents were together until I was about 9 or 10. Then they divorced. So I have two sisters. So it's my mom, my dad, and my two sisters at that time. My parents separated. My mom remarried. My dad remarried. My mom then went on and had twins, and then actually married into my now stepfather, his family, who had a daughter and a son. So I have two biological sisters, a stepbrother and a stepsister, half brother and a half sister.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that answers your question, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's like you technically have 6 siblings.
Yeah, technically six siblings. One of them I don't communicate with as much. We don't hear much from her, but yeah, six siblings.
Cool. Okay. Um, what is the age difference from are you the youngest, oldest? Your two biologicals, were they in the middle? What happened there?
Yeah, I'm the oldest.
Okay.
So my sisters are, most of us are kind of around the same age range, but I'm the oldest.
Okay. Cool. So I'm the youngest of 5.
Okay,
Uh,
wait, all biological?
no.
Okay.
So my mom, my dad,
Uh-huh.
okay, they were both married and both had a son and a daughter.
Okay.
Then they both got divorced.
Okay.
They got married to to each other and then had me.
Okay. So you got yours, mine, and ours.
Yeah, exactly. But now my parents are divorced. No other kids, nothing else like that. They got divorced. Um, sort of like throughout like a 10-year process when I was in high school and then officially when I was in college. So I lived with one of my sisters here.
Uh-huh.
Um, my other sister lives in Central Florida, Melbourne, and both my
You're
brothers.
in Boca?
Yeah, I live in Pompano. I work in Boca.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and my both of my brothers live in Rhode Island,
Okay.
not far from where we grew up, and both my parents still live in Rhode Island.
Okay, so you have a sister in Central Florida, you're living with one sister, two brothers, and your parents in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Okay, heard.
Your siblings are all still close by, in a sense, or
Yeah, we're all in the Central Florida area.
your parents, you see both of them still?
Yeah. So my mom is she's we're all in the Central Florida area, different parts like east side versus west side, but yeah, we're all here.
Cool, cool. Growing up, you were the oldest child, so I
Yeah.
had it on the different end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, did you play a lot of sports? What did that look like from like an activity lifestyle?
Yeah, I did a lot. I played a lot of sports. Parents and allowed me to play a lot of sports. I bounced around. I did anything from like YMCA, did a lot of YMCA sports, like anything from like basketball to flag football, soccer, swimming, um, tennis, and then towards high school was when I started getting into football. Didn't stick with that for very long because they picked on me for my size, but I was a run man. I was like 5 foot tall, 85 pounds, like runty run. I got pictures, man. I was like I was a stick figure. You drew a stick figure, that was me across the
Bro,
board.
was that freshman year of high school playing football?
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
same here. I was not even I was 5 foot in like maybe half an inch, maybe not
He's
even.
like, and that happened counts.
Yeah, that way, dude, back then it definitely counted. And I weighed 105. That was my freshman year of high school. Yeah.
We were runts.
Yeah, dude. Yep. I didn't play sophomore and junior year. I came back and played senior year.
I didn't I didn't really get to play, even though I was like one of the quicker of the athletes and like had like really good routes and everything. It was just because I was short. There was like much taller people than I was. I ended up getting into competitive weightlifting and did that all 4 years of high school. And then it was like around my junior year when I was pretty much the coach of the weightlifting team. Like I was coaching everybody because like I had the best form and like the coaches were not really teaching good form. And then head coach of the football team's like, you should come play for the team. I'm like, nope, not doing any of
Not
that.
happening.
You should have picked me up when I was early sproutish and had a lot of possibility. I'm taking my limitlessness somewhere else.
Yeah. That's what's up. Damn. So what sparked the weightlifting thing? Like was it that like typical like young ego thing that like
Being
damn like
runty.
yeah like I'm too small to play football, so I'm just gonna lift weights until I'm not small enough
Yep.
or no,
It
until I'm not.
was it was absolutely 100% a desire to fit in.
Mm,
I wanted to be on the football team. Like I always struggled with not feeling like I was good enough or could hang out with the cool kids. Like I wanted, that was like part of my identity. I was trying to identify with this group. So I was like, if I lift weights and I get bigger, I'll be better. I'll be seen. I wanted to be seen, struggle for identity, very common at that age. So I started lifting weights and that became just how I identified. I ended up getting the competitive. I did wrestling also my freshman year. And then I got into competitive cheerleading my junior year. Competitive cheerleading and weightlifting were my favorite. I stuck that out and it became my way of playing and expressing. And even those two, in a way, have evolved and are still in my life.
yeah, for sure. Tell me about the competitive cheerleading, because I had two friends in high school that ended up doing cheerleading. Um, One of them taught me how to backflip. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So how did that come about? What sparked that?
My buddy Corbin is it's interesting. I haven't spoken to this guy in years, but we both did weightlifting together and he was doing it and he was just cool. He was a really cool dude, and he was like dating one of the cheerleaders, and like talked about how it was like a lot of fun. He's like, you should do it, you would enjoy it. And I ended up getting into it, and also our team was actually really good. Really enjoyed it. My role essentially was like the simplest way to throw is like you throw women in the air and you catch them in different things. Like it was a lot of fun. It was like strength and also mobility and coordination. Like of course I wouldn't have thought in those terms then, but there was so many different fun elements to it and it was super challenging, like really, really, really challenging. You think like lifting weights is challenging, but it's not nearly as dynamic as say something like cheerleading. So it became a way to have fun, connect with cool people, and we ended up winning states my junior year and getting second place my following year. I still had a fat ring somewhere, like from when we won. It was cool. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, dude. And that obviously sparked a lot of your gymnastic desire and capabilities and um, unreal shoulder strength that allows you to do inversions and shit like that.
Yeah, I got into after more towards my college years. I got into acro yoga, acrobatics, yoga, hand balancing, and that was around the time when I shifted from more conventional training, bench, heavier squats, deadlifts, and clean and jerks and things of that nature, and move towards more like body weight calisthenic type training. That was like college was around the time that transition started happening.
Cool. That's what's up. Now it makes a whole lot of sense. You developed strength very early on, and then you decided to coordinate that into some sort of full body, free weight, dynamic control. That makes a lot of sense. After
Yeah,
watching,
it was. Go ahead,
watching,
my bad.
no, I was just saying after watching you move, it totally adds up now.
Yeah, my training was always in response to like what I was super geeking out about. So like at the time weightlifting, I was geeking out about it, and I wanted to crush it. So there was a point where I say this because it's kind of funny to me, but at the time, kind of like when I was at my peak, if you will, I was probably about like 139 pounds on the team, and I was pushing like 280 on bench, squatting close to um what was I squatting close to then? I think it was like 385, clean and jerking like 275. I got really dense, but then when I tried to get into acrobatics and all those other things, I was super stiff. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't really move very well and would like experience a lot of injuries. So naturally, I started to lean out and work on mobility, and like that, like strength in that way was less, but my strength in other ways started to develop, and that was now it kind of like further developed into what I play with now.
That's super cool. I really only started like bro lifting in like junior year of high school, because for me, I played football um, my freshman and senior year. I
Mm-hmm.
played basketball every year of high school, and
Nice.
that was my pride and joy. And I played baseball my first 2 years of high school and my senior year of high school. So I was always doing something um, in terms of like playing a sport.
Mm-hmm.
And with basketball, I mean, basketball's 2 hours every night, every day, some sort of game, or two, maybe even three in a week.
Dang.
Um, so I didn't, and from a basketball perspective, that the general culture is not weightlifting whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really got into it until I started to realize after my junior year, like, okay, now going into senior year, like I really need to, I need to put on some muscle. I need to gain a little bit of strength to be able to compete. Um, and then I also had the desire to play football my senior year. So um, I ended up just starting to lift and do like bro lifting stuff. But
Pro
I essentially
lifting.
graduated. I was, yeah, I was, like pyramid sets until you can't, do a push up, and then you're done. You walk out, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Very familiar.
yeah, yeah. So uh, I did always have like, I'm sure you probably had a fascination with. Maybe it's just me. I always wanted to be like a fucking ninja when I was a kid. Like I think rocket power and being auto is still my life mission. Like I just want to be able to snowboard and skateboard. And are you looking it up right now?
Yeah. I'm like, who's Rocket Power?
And surf. You don't, dude, you don't know rocket power?
Oh, yes, I vaguely remember that. I didn't watch it all that much.
Oh my God, dude. If you go back and watch that, I'm pretty sure you would still enjoy it. You would be
He
like,
said it's still good to this day, it's still good.
yeah. It's pretty much like West Coast SoCal, like pothead kids that just literally play any and all sports, dude. They're rollerblading and playing hockey in the street, and then they're like skating down San Francisco hills, and then they're shredding up some dope waves. Like it's
Wild.
that's exactly who like I want to be. I just want to do all that shit all the
Yep.
time. But I also had a fascination with kung fu and karate, the Karate Kid, Three Ninjas, like all of those things as a kid. And that really always was in the back of my mind. So even when I started bro lifting, I was always doing crazy shit on the bars. I was always a wild kid in the playground, and would always do like flips and monkey bars, like in crazy ways that other people couldn't do, and jump from one to the next. Um, so I kind of just started to blend all those things together at junior senior year of high school, um, and it was not really structured in like a beneficial way, especially for performance going to play college basketball. Um, so it was interesting. And then I found myself getting hurt and injured and patella tendonitis and all those things just from jumping too much and, doing plyometrics 8 days a week.
Sheesh. Say, I will dunk with
Yeah.
great force.
Exactly. But yeah, that all spawned me into wanting to become an athletic trainer. My sister tore her ACLs playing basketball in high school, I watched that and I was like, ooh, I want to be a physical therapist. Watching her rehab. Like I get to be around sports and athletes and do something cool with the human body. That's what's up. Like I'm down. Plus they make good money, dude. They make like 100K a year. That's so sick.
Mm-hmm.
So then it spawned into the understanding of like, well, maybe I could be a nurse and be a little bit more like medicinal, and help more people in that like immediate sense. And then once I played college basketball and I was working like one-on-one with the athletic trainers, because I was, low back pain, SI joints, stiffness, weak core, lumbar discs, herniations, all those things. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, actually, this is what I want to do. This is kind of that blend of both, understanding the medicinal, Western medicine, and really understanding the body, being in an active setting, not like hanging out in a physical therapy office and working with
Yeah.
elderly people, but being with athletes. Um, so that's what sparked me to take on that journey of athletic training. And I say all that to say this: you're now graduating into college and you're getting into all of those different modalities of you have traditional, strength, but now you're adding in the body weight, the capability of positional strength, right? So, what were you studying in college, and did that change at all as you got more enveloped in those kind of modalities?
It's a great question. I got a degree in technical education and industry training, which is a
Hmm.
bunch of words for saying professional level instructional design and curriculum development, pretty much creating training at the corporate level.
More words. The second way you explained it, it sounded
Man,
like
it's
more
still weird for me.
words.
Trainer, creating curriculum stuff. We
Okay.
made stuff and taught people. Was essentially the degree, and then I got a minor in psychology. Um, I got my degree because I saw what my dad did, and he was making a positive impact as a director of training and development in various companies, including now he recently worked at Amazon. Now he works at Microsoft, and I just saw like he enjoyed what he was doing. He was supporting people, and he was making good money doing it. And at the time, like I didn't know any better. Like there was no real conversation around what are your passions, what are your interests, what is your purpose and your calling. It was just you need to figure out a degree now because you got to have your shit figured out by the now, which makes absolutely no sense in hindsight. But
Yeah.
uh psychology was the thing that I was just engrossed in. Like my first professor in psychology, how I actually came to know him, like super short story, it's actually a little bit longer, but I'll keep it short. My buddy comes to me, he says, yo, you have got to come meet this professor. He blew my mind with a syllabus. I'm hooked.
Yeah, you're like, what?
I'm a syllabus. I need to meet this guy. So we like go up to his room, and he's a professor of psychology, and I listened to him for like a couple of minutes. Like I shit you not, I was there for a few minutes, and he blew my mind. I never had someone blow my mind in the way that he did in such a short interval of time.
Hmm.
Naturally, you ask yourself, hmm, why? Like, why is this so fascinating? So I'm like, I want to be in your class. I don't know what's going to take, but like, please let me into your class. And how like in college where there's like this interval where like after so many classes, they don't allow you to change classes. It's like, it's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So we hit that point. He's like two or three classes have passed. And he's like, yeah, sorry, I can't do it. The only way that it could happen is if you went to the Department of Psychology and they let you switch.
Mm.
So I said, all right, screw it. Went downstairs, went to the Department of Psychology. They said, yeah, no, sorry, we can't do that. The only way you can have a switch is if the professor allows it. And I was just like, okay. So I went back to the dude and I was like, look, they said that I can only enter the class if you let me. Now I get why you're telling me no. Or actually, no, this is what he said. I said, but I told him, I was like, I'm willing to do whatever it's going to take to be in your class. And he said, look, every student that I have ever let try and do this, and it has been many, like over 70 or 50 or 70, something like that. He's like, a bunch. Every student I've ever had do this failed, flunked out. Everyone. He said, but if you want to take on that, then sure, I'll let you do it. I did it. I hopped in, took my first exam. I studied, took my first exam, got a C. After that, I studied. Every single exam after that, I aced it. I aced them, and I ended up having one of the highest grades in the class by the end of the semester. I fell in love with psychology because of him and his way of thinking. I took subsequent classes with him. Mind you, this was back in like 2015, 2014, 2015, probably 2015. And now to this day, it's 2020, 2021. And he is now a mentor slash friend of mine. Matter of fact, I'm going to see him next week. Like we meet at his practice and we'll talk about everything under the sun from plant medicine to spirituality, sexuality, like theory, like we'll talk about anything. He so drastically changed my life with blowing my mind with the syllabus, like that whole thing, like it's so funny that psychology kind of became one of the things that stuck. Although to your original question, like did your did your degree change? I ended up sticking with it. I ended up sticking that one out and not really ever really using it and enjoying it. But psychology, on the other hand, that became the gateway drug for what I love studying now, which is neuroscience and human behavior. And I wouldn't necessarily say like you could, people would know by biohacking, but like in general, how to optimize human performance and behavior and how to decrease slash eliminate stress, anxiety, depression, and kind of like one of my big missions is the end of unnecessary suicide. So psychology became my gateway drug into all of that. It just was fascinating.
Interesting. If you had to give me a minute and a half blurb of the concrete, like saying or perspective that this professor laid into you, what would it be?
In terms of what he said to get me into the class, I don't remember, but what I can say and what so much gravitated and pulled me in was that whenever he would explain a concept where most professors would say, here's the science, write your flashcard, study it, he would always give these incredibly detailed and personal stories or personal stories of others who he had permission of sharing that would really drive the point home. Like some of the things that he shared back and then when I heard it, to this day, I remember it in my head. It sticks and it's glued. Like one random one that he shared was that whatever you look for, you will find. And the example that he gave was if you are in a relationship with someone, let's just say I'm dating somebody or you're dating somebody, if for some reason you get a sinking suspicion that they're cheating on you, naturally what starts to happen is now your brain, the part of your brain that is responsible for focusing your attention, which part of that's going to be the reticular activating system that focuses in on certain information, you tune away and turn out certain information, you focus on others, you will start to gather information for the belief and the idea that, oh, my partner's cheating on me. And naturally what will happen is even if that person wasn't cheating on you in some way or another, they end up cheating on you. And he would say that you actually caused that because, and I don't think he wouldn't have explained it this way then, but what I later realized is that he was referring to something much deeper, which is the very nature of energetics and how we pull things towards us that we focus on. If you're focusing on bad shit, you pull in bad shit. So the initial concept was just what you focus on or what you put energy into will come about. And that I'll never forget. Changed my entire way that I look at life.
That's yeah, that's a great perspective and example. I'm glad you shared that because it applies to all facets of life. It's not one specific thing. And I think what I've started to realize is there's principles of life and principles of the universe, laws of the universe. Are you an Alan Watts fan?
I love Alan Watts. He's one of my favorites.
Dude, I listen to Alan Watts pretty much every morning. I pull up different YouTube clips.
You ever listen to the chill step ones?
Yeah, those are good. Yeah, I also listen to let me see if I can find the YouTube account. I listen on Spotify. So for anybody who's watching if you just search Alan Watts and you listen for 10 minutes, your mind will be absolutely blown. It's just a different approach. Like, just the way he unveils some of these life lessons is
Mm-hmm.
so awesome. Um, and it's funny that you mention it, the whole what you are uh, putting energy into is going to basically flourish, right? It's pretty much going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
um, the grass grows where you water it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about the the Buddhist way of thinking that says you should not pull those things that you want towards you, and you should not push those that you don't want away from you. Instead, you are essentially just taking them in as experiences and not letting um, them dictate your energy in a sense. Keep
Mm-hmm.
your energy focused on where you want it, but when it gets close, you should not be pulling it in. You should let it go at its own rate, come and go as it needs to and as it pleases, because it may get close to you. It may be that thing. It may be uh, for example, a relationship that looks like so many of the things that you want out of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to pull it in, don't let go, don't let go, don't let go, and it is going to let go. It is going to give way, because it's almost too much of a magnet, right? And things have to repel to a certain extent. Um, it's like the scale. I forget what the name of that potentiality scale is, but if you look on the um, if it was an infinitely growing scale, right, and it
Mm-hmm.
was essentially multiplying by 2 the entire time, right? It's that idea that it's going to divide by 2 all the way, all the way, all the way, and it's never going to hit that line. There's no point at any point are those 2 lines going to meet, because there's always going to be able to there's always going to be a half of that, a multiplier. Um, and I actually had this thought and conversation the other day that I think there's something smaller than the atom, right? And someone may be like, well, how, like what? And that doesn't make any sense. But in the grand scheme of things, like, how can we just say that's the end? That's the finite amount. That's it. There's nothing smaller than it. Just because we can't comprehend it as humans doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Um, so I would love for you to share some more of your kind of like knowledge in the world of, let's go with the reticular activating system, because that's something I've heard a lot of gurus talk about. Tony Robbins obviously being like a big one, he always talks about that. um, what can you explain to the audience about the reticular activating system?
Well, first and foremost, I'll honestly admit that I'm by no means an expert. What I know is from a book that I read. Actually, it's very, very timely. It was called Limitless by Jim Quick.
Okay.
And the book describes how, okay, so this is how he described it was, again, what you focus on, or what you bring awareness to, what you put energy to and into, you will notice. So it's like that whole like classic, if you were to say, oh, I really want to get a Tacoma, a truck, right? I want to get a Tacoma. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you start noticing Tacomas everywhere. You say, dang, look at all these Tacomas. It came out of nowhere. It's like, well, really, that's just your reticular activating system focusing in on certain things because you've given it a point of focus. So, for example, if I ask the question, if you're reading a book, there's all this information inside of a book, but if you have guiding questions like, how do I increase the amount of time that I spend in flow? Then you're looking for information that's going to answer your question. The brain is now being focused in on it's taking its criteria and it's like a Google search. If you type in Tacoma, it's going to give you a bunch of Tacomas. Same
Mm,
thing. Brain reticular activating system. It says, you said Tacoma. Now here's a bunch of Tacomas. You're welcome.
interesting. I love the Google search analogy. And I have a question for you in terms of the book analogy. Do
Mhm.
you try to go into situations, events, maybe interviews or books or podcasts with an open mind or with guiding questions?
Great question. I would say both.
Hmm.
And the reason being is because by nature, just so you a little bit about Wolf, uh, I always tend to, even a lot of times unconsciously, go towards the middle way. Meaning, uh, I believe wholeheartedly that flow is the space between intention and surrender, letting go and knowing where I want to go. Because there's this whole modality of I want to go this direction and I'm open to whatever the universe has to add to this. I make space for that. So if flow is the space between intention and surrender, then in the same way, when I look at, like, for example, coming to something like this, I asked you questions like, hey, like, what should I prepare, et cetera, because I do believe that flow is a product of having some amount of structure. For example, you played basketball. What would happen if there was no rules? Chaos. No one knew what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
You had to have some structure in order, and some intention in order to have flow. To then now we have our rules. Now you can do whatever you want inside of these rules. And there's an entire plane of science that will tell you that that is one of the more productive ways to work, because if everything is possible, there's too many options for the brain. It becomes overwhelming. You go to a
Yeah.
restaurant and they give you 10 pages of options. You're like, I can't pick one. I'm just going to go with what I normally get. I'm getting a pad thai.
Yeah. Pad thai. That's never a bad option.
It's safe. You
Yeah.
know it's good, and every time it's consistent.
Yeah. Depending on where you go, for sure.
Oh gosh, I haven't had a bad pad thai, so I'm not gonna put that energy into my space.
Not that there's bad, really. Like it's generally a very easy to make, good quality, food item. But
Yeah.
there's definitely some that are better than others.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Did that answer your question, by the way?
for sure. I love the idea of um, flow is the difference between tension and surrender, or is the middle ground, right?
Yeah, right in the center. Some questions and also some, like,
And freedom.
not knowing. I didn't
Yeah,
really know all of what we were going to talk about, but I love the spontaneity.
cool. Do you feel like I gave you enough guidance? Do you feel like we had any structure?
Uh, we didn't have a whole lot of structure, but in a way, I kind of added my own. I kind of went on your Instagram and did my own little bits of research and kind of like paid attention to some of the flows. And I was like, okay, I got a little bit, and I know what I generally talk about. And I'm sure he has whatever he wants to bring forth. So I kind of did like my own little bit of
Yeah.
setting the space.
For me, it's really painting a picture. Generally, and I think I had said this to you on the phone. It's just you have a story. It's unique to you,
Yeah.
and like you alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, your goal is to share your truth and your story, your divine truth, and have that inspire other people. And I really just think the ability for people to share their stories in this sort of open format allows other people to listen and really gain uh, a sort of practical guidance and relationship to what others are going through, what they're
Mm-hmm.
going through, and how that person's story can kind of influence and inspire them. So,
And I appreciate that. I like recently did an interview with someone. Was it 20 minutes? I think it was a 20-minute interview. And everything was structured down to the T. They knew exactly what they're going to ask me. They knew it was everything. And it felt a little suffocating.
yeah,
And, like too much structure, suffocating.
yeah,
Absolutely none. For me, it's like, whoa. But I feel like the way that you shaped it and everything, it was supportive. And that's actually how a lot of my podcast has been, especially the first like season, if you will, when I recorded the first like 40-ish episodes, I would have an idea of who the person was, but I almost never had anything immediate that I was going to specifically focus on with them. I wanted to have them share their story. And now, like, kind of going into my second round, I realized kind of like that reticular activating system conversation around like having a focus. My next kind of playing around with it, my next intention is to continue to have that flow aspect, and then having kind of specific questions that I think is going to pull out that inner genius and touch a central theme. Because I think that there are certain conversations, like if I were to ask you, what's one thing that, or one to three things that if I ask you about it, you could just talk for hours on end.
Mm.
You start to get in their world, you find some specific things that they can speak about, and now you're engaging them in an energized conversation because they're already passionate about it. And then you just find the people who want to hear that conversation. So one of my issues with the podcast is I was trying to speak so um, broadly and trying to get everybody to listen to every podcast. But what I realized was that me doing that was probably turning a lot of people away because they didn't know why they were listening. They didn't feel like they were being spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of started to influence it. But this format, how you have it set up, I mean, it makes a lot of space for flow. And for me, I think that's good. Like people hear and feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a general comfortability when you just hear people conversing.
Mm-hmm.
Allows you to not feel like most people will listen to something of this nature while they're driving or doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my thing with a 20-minute podcast is if I miss 3 minutes of that because I was lost in traffic or just my mind slipped away like it naturally will, where, where is that tension coming from? It's coming from the fact that I feel like I missed something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're watching a movie and you miss a good scene, and you're like, ah, damn it, I got to rewind it. Like I didn't want that concept. Where you can miss a minute or two of this and still have good context. We're not moving from one topic to the other so rapidly and so fast. And there's depth to the topic as well that
Mm-hmm.
allows you to, even if you listen to 5 out of the 7 minutes that we spend on a certain topic, you get the underlying, you know, perspective that each person has on the topic as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
hearing the sound bit or reading the headline. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I think our world has kind of gone sour, is we don't have the ability to draw context underneath our pictures that we're painting,
Ooh,
right? Like there's
this lack of depth.
there's so much lack of depth, dude. Like you're watching people on TV that you don't know, and
Mm-hmm.
they're dictating and telling you what is going on in the world. And then you have different platforms showing different people, and they're showing different aspects and perspectives on the world. And then you have them competing against each other, and all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden you have this massive group of people following these people that they don't know going against each other, and there's no depth. No one in this big ass group down here knows anyone or knows anything about anyone on the other side. And these ones, they might know each other on a broad spectrum level because they're all over TV and their information's all out there, but they don't know each other. They've never sat down and had, pad thai together and realized that they both like pad thai at the same restaurant. Like, that
Uh,
right there can bring people together.
yeah.
Food and long conversation,
Mm-hmm.
or just experience in general, something
Yeah.
that allows you to slow down and have a mutual feeling and share space and aura. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is what you're talking about to me is so important because I was talking to someone about the podcast when I initially created it. They the experts, if you will
Mhm.
tell you stay in about the 20 to 45-minute range. Anything over that, you're getting a massive decrease in viewership, which makes sense because if you pay attention to our culture, we're especially TikTok heavy, which is just like swipe dopamine, 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 hacking our neurobiology. Like this whole, like we have the attention span of less than that of a goldfish, which is like 7 seconds. Like we are so instant gratification wired that I think that that's where a lot of our dis-ease, our stress, our anxiety, our depression comes from because of an inability to go into the depths, to slow down and listen to a longer form podcast, which, mine generally run anywhere from like an hour to 2 hours, because from my research, have found that flow and these flow cycles, that to have a natural flow cycle, you actually need about 90 minutes. That there's an initial phase, probably like your first 15, 20, 25 minutes, where you're meeting a lot of not flow. You have to move through a lot of not flow to get to flow. But it's that 90-minute period that actually allows us to dive into that flow state fully. Hence why I aim for that time period, despite what the experts said. But also, I wanted, in a way, to train the listener to be able to sit and listen to this period of time, because it's developing that habit that allows you to create that depth, that creates more meaning and feeling and experience in life. If you're just constantly, go ahead.
No, you finish.
If we're constantly swiping quick, how can you possibly really understand something at an essence level?
I totally agree. And I also love the fact that you're saying the production that you're putting out is quietly teaching someone to be less anxious, a little bit more calm, a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more enveloped in creating a flow habit that can translate to other aspects of their life. Because when you flow in any aspect of your life, it helps you flow in all aspects of your life. Yes.
How you do one thing is how you do all things.
Yeah. Valid. So valid, dude.